I now recognize myself for an opening statement. On July 13th, 2024, our nation came within an inch of an unmitigated tragedy and crisis. In Butler, Pennsylvania, a 20-year-old gunman mounted a building in plain view of former President Donald J. Trump's campaign rally, took aim, and fired multiple rounds. At exactly the right moment, however, President Trump turned his head to read a chart so that a bullet which would have pierced his skull instead grazed his ear. 3 others sitting behind President Trump on the stage experienced a different fate. 50-year-old Corey Comparator, a father and former fire chief, was struck and killed. As one outlet recently reported, this brave and loving man, quote, spent his final moments diving down in front of his family, protecting them from the gunfire that rang out, end quote. He is survived by his wife and 2 daughters. 2 others, 57-year-old David Dutch and 74-year-old James Copenhaver, were seriously injured. I'd like to pause for a moment of silence in remembrance of Corey and in prayer for the recovery of David and James.
Appearance on Dion's Daily Dose does not imply endorsement from or by any candidate. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by Dion Bergeron or Dion's Daily Dose are his own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of any guest. Material and information presented is for general information purposes only. The Dion's Daily Dose name in all forms and abbreviations are the property of its owners, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service. If you'd like to support the show, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/Dion's Daily Dose.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Dion's Daily Dose. Today's episode, I'm Dion.
And I'm Shawn.
And today's episode, we're going to be covering the Senate hearing.
The House hearing. It's still the House.
Yeah, the House hearing. My apologies. We're going to do the Senate hearing at a different time. The House hearing where the Pennsylvania State Police
Commissioner
went to the House, the Oversight Committee.
This is the Homeland Security
Right.
Committee.
To basically answer questions as to how what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania was allowed to happen. This is one of a series of investigative hearings that the House and Senate are attempting to get to the bottom of this. Let's not forget that 2 people were injured and a 3rd individual lost their lives, which is why we played the clip there at the beginning. Let's remember them in our thoughts, especially when we're talking about this, and remember that there are families that are dealing with real loss of loved ones. So let's try to avoid using what almost happened and I get it, but try to understand it from their point of view as well. Our first clip, sans the one in the intro, is actually from Representative Thompson from Mississippi. He's a Democrat. Right?
The opening was green.
The opening was the chair, Representative Green, Republican from Texas. But our next clip that we're going to play is Representative Thompson, Democrat from Mississippi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to everyone. It's been 10 days since a 20-year-old took his father's AR-15 rifle to a campaign event in Butler, Pennsylvania, shot the former president and 2 others, and took the life of an innocent bystander who died protecting his family. We're grateful for the brave law enforcement officers who responded to the heinous attack, and our thoughts and prayers continue to be with the victims and their families. Let me be clear at the outset of today's hearing. The Secret Service has a no-fail mission, and there must be answers and accountability for what occurred. The security failures must be identified and addressed to ensure that they never, ever happen again. That work is already well underway. The Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Pennsylvania State Police have active and ongoing criminal investigations. The Secret Service has begun an internal investigation. Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, has announced a bipartisan independent law enforcement review. And later this week, Congress will vote on a resolution to establish a task force on the attempted assassination. This committee also has begun its oversight as well.
So, first of all, I find it extremely annoying when people can't pronounce relatively simple words like heinous. However, willing to let that slide because everything else that we're talking about is pretty darn important.
Yeah.
Forget about your hatred for Trump, right? Seriously, I understand some of you may be suffering from TDS. I mean, it's a chronic condition. There's no known treatment. However, put aside the fact that it's Donald Trump. Imagine if it was a president that you actually like, whether that's Obama, Biden. Well, President Ice Cream doesn't count. He's not really the president. But I'm kidding. Whatever. I'm not getting into it. But Obama, just imagine it was Obama that they almost killed and did kill other people in the audience. Imagine the outrage. Imagine the links that people would go to demand accountability. All we ask is a level playing field.
Yep.
That you treat it the same way that it was treated or would be treated if it was anyone else. That's all.
They're all human beings.
Exactly.
And nobody deserves that.
That's right. And we all bleed the same, in case you haven't checked. It's all right. So our next clip is the swearing in and etc. And that is at the 15 minute. Where'd I go? 15:36. I'm sorry. Took me a second. 15:36, and this goes to 16:50. Here we go.
I'm pleased to have an important panel of witnesses before us today. I ask that our witnesses please rise and raise their right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will give before the Committee on Homeland Security of the United States of Representatives will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? You may be seated. Let the record reflect that the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. I would now like to formally introduce our witnesses. Colonel Christopher Paris serves as the Commissioner for the Pennsylvania State Police. In this role, he exercises command, administrative, and fiscal authority over the Pennsylvania State Police, the 10th largest police agency in the United States. Commissioner Paris has served in the Pennsylvania State Police since his enlistment in 1999. Thank you for the support getting to the site yesterday. Mr. Patrick Yos currently serves as the President, National Fraternal Order of Police. In this role, Mr. Yos leads the order and its more than 367,000 law enforcement members in representing police officers and the profession. Prior to taking his current role, Mr. Yos served an impressive 36 years as an active law enforcement officer.
That is impressive. You know what? I will say this. One of the things that I appreciate, at least in this circumstance, I don't know if it's always this way, but if you're going to have someone in charge of the largest police union out there, I mean, we're talking 300 and something thousand officers, he said, it should be someone who actually was an officer, in my opinion. A lot of times these unions have people who are completely disconnected from reality, but disconnected from the everyday job.
Yeah.
You know, as union chairs or whatever. So we got the guy in charge of the Pennsylvania State Police, and we got the FOP union president. I mean, they should know what's going on, right? They should.
We'll see.
We'll see. All right. So our next clip proceeds right after this, and apparently it is Christopher Paris.
I thank the witnesses for being here today, and I now recognize Colonel Paris for 5 minutes to summarize his opening statement.
Here we go.
Chairman Green, Ranking Member Thompson, Homeland Security Committee members, good morning. I am Colonel Christopher Paris, Commissioner of the Pennsylvania State Police. I would like to take this opportunity to offer our condolences on the passing of Congresswoman Lee. I would also like to take this opportunity to express our condolences to the Comparator family and offer our continued prayers to Mr. Dutch, Mr. Copenhaver, as well as former President Trump as they continue to recover. I'm humbled to be here today and testify about a tragic incident which has deeply impacted the Butler community, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and our nation. I would like to dedicate my testimony here today to the approximately 6,400 women and men, civilian and enlisted, of the PSP who work tirelessly for Pennsylvania, and it is my honor to lead them. I'd like to offer a perspective that this is very much an ongoing, complex, and dynamic investigation. And each day, as we arrive at day 10 today, I learn multiple new facts as we uncover new information as the investigation progresses.
Makes sense.
I'd like to offer a point of clarification affirmatively about PSP's role.
Okay.
Prior to the shooting, our role was to support the Secret Service with personnel and assets that they requested. Our operation plan completed to fulfill this responsibility consisted of 32 members, and we had two main responsibilities. A motorcade operation for the transportation with the Secret Service of former President Trump, as well as manning and staffing security posts inside the secure area of the Butler County Farm Show.
I'm getting the distinct impression that this is someone who's trying to say, hey, that wasn't our responsibility. I'm just saying, it's giving that, not my circus, not my monkeys kind of feel. I'm just saying.
Additionally, we provided two marked cars with uniformed troopers outside of the secure perimeter to provide roving duties, as the name implies, responding to incidents that may occur as a large gathering of people were moving to the venue. After the shooting, very early after the shooting, I had a conversation with the FBI, wherein the FBI is the responsible investigating agency for the attempted assassination of a former president under federal law.
Okay.
The same actions that led to that also led to the homicide of one Pennsylvanian and the attempted homicide of two additional, as well as the use of force by the Secret Service counter sniper to neutralize the threat of Mr. Crooks, thus necessitating an officer-involved shooting investigation. So the PSP currently is conducting a criminal investigation parallel to and in concert with the FBI to identify any and all parties criminally culpable under Pennsylvania state law for the homicide and for the attempted homicides.
Okay. So basically, much like I thought, yeah, we were there, but we were responsible for inside the perimeter, and that was outside the perimeter. That's not really our deal, man. Obviously, that's not exactly what he said, but I think that's a good paraphrase. Our next clip is Patrick Yoes, which is the FOP president that they just talked about, 2112.
Great work done here in Washington. I want to thank you for providing me with an opportunity to appear before you today on behalf of the 377,000 members of the Fraternal Order of Police as this committee examines the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump just 10 days ago. Before I begin my testimony, I want to express my admiration for the Secret Service agents who jumped into action and protected the former president. Rarely does the public witness just how selfless these agents are, placing themselves between flying bullets and their protectee.
I agree with that.
They, along with state and local law enforcement officers on the scene that day, demonstrated extraordinary courage. I also want to extend my thoughts and prayers to the family of Corey Comparator and the others who were injured that day. My testimony today will not be specific to the attempted assassination of President Trump. Instead, I hope to provide a perspective of state and local law enforcement when providing support and assistance to these events. We must remember that the law enforcement mission is a shared mission, And agencies at every level routinely cooperate and collaborate with one another. Law enforcement in our country is highly decentralized, with more than 90% of services provided by state and local agencies through more than 18,000 different jurisdictions. State and local agencies would not be effective without the support of their federal colleagues, and our federal partners would be unable to perform their functions without the assistance of state and local agencies. Anyone suggesting that the United States Secret Service not rely on state and local agencies at these events is simply uninformed.
Okay. Are people suggesting that?
Yeah.
Has that come up? Like, you know, why do you use local law enforcement anyway? Why doesn't Secret Service handle everything?
Yeah, the Secret Service kind of is pointing the finger at the local police that
Okay,
this
so-
happened.
Yeah, so Secret Service is saying, oh, the local police are the ones who dropped the ball. State police, local police are saying it was Secret Service's circus. Interesting. So what we have is a series of it's his fault. It's his fault. It's his fault. Yeah. It's why am I not surprised? But hopefully through these hearings we can actually get to the bottom of exactly whose fault it really is. All right, so our next clip is quite a bit downwind, such as it is, and it is at the 1 hour 14 minute. Apparently, quite a common. It says most replayed. So just a second for it to catch up. Okay, let's see here. 1:14:16. And this is going to go to 1:19:10. And again, this is the chair, Representative Green, Republican from Texas.
I think Tennessee.
Sorry. Well, it says Texas on the stuff.
Does it? Maybe it is Texas.
It's a T state. I'm going to tell you that. It's definitely a T state. But it's fine. It doesn't. All right. Mr. Green, Representative Green, you want to find out where he's from?
Yeah, just play the clip and then I'll.
Okay, here we go.
Called after all members have been recognized. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning. Colonel Paris, typically these events, do they typically have two control rooms or two sort of tactical operations areas where the Secret Service is in their sort of spot and the local law enforcement is in their sort of command center? Is that how it's typically done?
I would say from my experience and from state police operations, to include this event as planned in our operations plan, we had integrated communications by having our PSP personnel in the Secret Service command post.
So your person was in there in that command post on this event?
Yes, sir.
Do you know if the local sheriff had anybody or the deputies that were also provided, the local guys?
I would be remiss at this point to say I knew an
Okay,
exact
okay.
listing of everyone in that command post.
The sheriff yesterday told us he did not. Would you expect him to have had somebody there?
So I would say generally, there's a lot of talk about interoperability and communications. The state police, for example, operate our own statewide radio network. So we have the ability to, if we have an incident, a long protracted incident, for example, where we need to patch other agencies in, we have the capability to do that. However, Secret Service, for example, maintains some additional encrypted communications. So the best way to integrate unified command
Is physically present in the
correct,
command
that would
site?
be our,
Yeah,
I-
that's
I
how
would
the
expect-
Army does it, the military.
I would expect our commanders to have personnel in there so that we could have a radio communication as well as a redundancy in the operations plan with a telephonic backup.
Do you know if in this particular case, I mean, normally they sweep these sites with dogs. Was a K-9 team used here for this event?
I do not know. I have not seen the Secret Service operations plan. I've asked for it. I've yet to receive it. I did double check. That was something that PSP could typically offer to the Secret Service if they requested it. And I did verify that in this event, we did not provide any dogs.
Okay. As I understand it, there wasn't one, but you'd expect one in a situation like this.
So I want to be clear that when the Secret Service interfaces with the state police for whatever protectee and level of protection they're endeavoring to provide, the Secret Service is the lead agency. So as per the earlier statement of 18,000 law enforcement agencies across the United States, it would be very difficult, I would assert, for the Secret Service to operate all across the United States and have each individual agency telling the Secret Service how the operation should be run. They're the lead agency. If that was something that their protocols called for during the initial meeting when preliminary steps and agencies were brought together, that would be something that would be discussed typically.
The AGR building, did your guys on the ground there ever voice concerns to the Secret Service for not putting somebody on that building?
So I suppose the best sequence of events that I can give you is that PSP was notified by email on July 5th about this event. There was an initial planning meeting where we had commanders present on Monday, July 8th. So over Tuesday the 9th and Wednesday the 10th, those commanders that we designated, basically our orders are from the front office, my team on down. You know, we work collaboratively with the Secret Service, collaborate, give them what we can. The final walkthrough occurred on the 11th. Present at that meeting were the two commanders that were tasked with both staffing the security checkpoints on the interior of the secure perimeter, as well as the commander who was going to be in charge of the motorcade. But in addition to that, a PSP area commander was on that walkthrough, holding the rank of major.
Could you share a little bit of insight? I appreciate the timeline, but could you share a little bit, because I only have about a
I
minute.
apologize.
Yeah, the specific to the AGR building.
So on that walkthrough, our area commander asked specifically who was responsible for the AGR building, and we were told that Butler ESU was responsible for that area by several Secret Service agents on that walkthrough.
Okay, now that's a very critical piece of information right there. In case you missed it, what he's saying is during the walkthrough, which is where they all get together, do a walkthrough of the entire perimeter, the contested area, whatever, the protectees area, right? They go through the whole place and they're given the opportunity to ask questions. They said, okay, who's responsible for this building? And they were told local Butler police were responsible for securing the AGR building. It's pretty cut and dry as far as I'm concerned. Got a few more seconds of this.
Okay. All right. One last quick question. Real quick, I mean, I'll let you comment about it. The slope of the roof, would that have prevented a sniper from being up there?
I don't believe so, sir.
Okay.
That's the most politically correct way he could have said, not a chance.
Yeah.
I mean, he's obviously, bear in mind, all of these law enforcement agencies have respect for one another. They're not going to purposefully go in front of Congress and be like, yeah, they screwed up, man. But that's pretty much as close as he can come to actually saying that. So that is very interesting. The next clip is actually right now to the 1:23:38 timestamp. And just so you guys know, this is on Fox News.
YouTube.
Fox News' YouTube channel, and it says police officials testify about Trump assassination attempt.
And he is from Tennessee. I wrote that wrong.
Tennessee. Okay, so he's from Tennessee, not Texas. All right, so it says up here, police officials testify about Trump assassination attempt. If you want to find it yourself. Okay, so here we go. And this is Rep. Thompson, Democrat from Mississippi, ranking member.
Thank you. I yield. I now recognize the ranking member for his 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Parrish, you talked about your tenure with the Pennsylvania State Police. Have you worked other events where a presidential candidate or the president has come to Pennsylvania?
Yes, I have, sir.
So this would not have been an unusual occurrence to participate?
I ran the numbers. We typically do about 20 missions a year, the low 20s a year in
Oh,
a
wow.
regular year. We're
Okay.
already in the low 20s this year, being an election year.
Okay.
So our commanders in the field who interface with the Secret Service to plan and provide support are on a routine basis. I wouldn't say an everyday occurrence, but a fairly routine basis.
Okay, so this is something that happens quite a bit. Not
Mhm.
every month, not every week, but quite a bit. Apparently, like you said, we're already in the low 20s this year. We're
Pennsylvania is
halfway
an
through.
important state.
It-
in the
yeah, and
election.
yeah, it is. Election wise, Pennsylvania is extremely important. There will probably be multiple more. So it's
The winner
just
of
an
Pen-
interesting note. This isn't like unknown to them. This
No.
is something that they do fairly frequently.
Okay. So can you walk us through the Pennsylvania State Police's interaction with the Secret Service? You kind of started off giving us from the point of contact that an occurrence was about to happen. Was there anything particular about the Butler, Pennsylvania event that stands out as regular, irregular, or anything?
I would say, not to my knowledge, based on our discussions with our commanders who planned it, it progressed along a normal timeline. They attempted to give the Secret Service, and I believe provided the Secret Service with everything they were requested.
So your role on that day in terms of the state police was what?
So I would classify it as in a support role, and the two main areas of responsibility for the state troopers that were assigned that day were those participating in the motorcade to get former President Trump from his point of landing to the venue in Butler County and back, with several other additional entities that were requested by the Secret Service. And then on site, we had to staff security posts that were determined by the Secret Service. All of those posts were inside of the secure perimeter of the Butler County Farm show.
I guess I was one of those individuals who traveled to Butler. Just for my information, have you had any interaction with the FBI or anything as they look into the investigation as to what you or your men observed on that day?
Yes, we're conducting an investigation largely in concert with and parallel to the Bureau, because the actions of crooks have federal legal implications and state law implications.
Okay, thank you.
And I think that's important to understand as well, because yes, the whole Trump thing is a federal thing, but the taking a life of a Pennsylvania citizen and injuring two additional, or like he said at the beginning, attempted murder, those are actual investigations at the state level. So there are multiple agencies involved in investigating this. And I don't know if their goals are exactly the same. I mean, I think they're slightly different.
You mean what their role should be?
Well, yeah, they're not just the roles that should be, but the way that they go about investigating and the things that they're looking into, and I think it's slightly different. It's just my opinion here.
President Yost, in your comments, you talked about the need for communication. You talked about FirstNet. And so we have federal, state, and local law enforcement at an event like what we're talking about in Butler.
FirstNet, if you guys don't know, it's basically the law enforcement and first responder cell towers.
Oh, okay.
It's their, I think it was started by AT&T after, I forget the exact occasion, but there was an emergency and first responders and law enforcement couldn't use their cell phones because the towers were being used by so many other people. So FirstNet basically takes priority over the towers.
I see.
So it allows them the opportunity to communicate, even though tons of people are on their phone or whatever. So just wanted to, that I actually know a little bit about.
But in our conversation with some of the locals,
Another method.
not state police, but the sheriff's department and the chief of police in Butler yesterday, those individuals did not have communication with actually state police or Secret Service. Would that, in your professional opinion, be a vulnerability for managing an event like this?
Well, I think we can go back to 9/11 when we identified at that time that the interoperability of different agencies to be able to communicate really was a hindrance. There's an infrastructure in place now to address these interoperabilities, but at the same time, they're not always utilized in every event. I do not have any direct knowledge whether that was the issue here, but I can tell you it is a common issue in law enforcement and ability for our agencies not to be able to communicate. Not that the technology is not necessarily there, it's because that they're not always incorporated.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Like he said, the technology is available. It just sometimes people aren't kept in the loop like they should be. That we're still trying to get to the bottom of if that was the case here, because there sure is an awful lot of, like matrix level dodging responsibility here, but we'll see. Next clip here is at the 125.43 to 131.55, and this is Representative McCall, Republican.
He's from
Texas.
He's from Texas.
I just like giving Shawn a hard time. Once again, Shawn goes
First,
through
sure
a lot
that
of work to make sure
need to be on.
that these are well done and that we have an appropriate selection here. Let's see here. Okay, 125.43.
Recognize Chairman McCall for 5 minutes questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank you for the site visit that we had at Butler, Pennsylvania yesterday. It was very eye-opening, educational. I agree with the ranking member's comments in terms of, after 9/11, after 9/11, connecting the dots and federal, state, and local working together was the answer. I led a joint terrorism task force when I worked at the Department of Justice, and I also was involved in national security events, so I kind of know how these things operate. My question is to Colonel Paris. It's standard practice that the lead federal agency will come in and meet with the state and locals regarding the security plan before the event, prior to the event. Sir, did you participate or did your department participate in that?
So I did not participate. As I stated earlier, there were two commanders dedicated to those two primary roles, the motorcade and the staffing of the posts on site within the secure perimeter, as well as a state police area commander. So just as a way of background, our area commander that covers multiple troops in that area of the state, out of nearly 5,000 troopers, there are only 4 area commanders. So that major was present for the walkthrough on the 11th.
And were your troopers assigned inside the perimeter or outside?
Inside.
Inside. And was
With
the
each other.
outside within the jurisdiction of the local police?
So just as a point of clarification, there were 2, on the operations plan, there were 2 marked cars that were assigned roving duties, which would primarily, as the name implies, be outside of the secure perimeter on roadways, responding to incidents that potentially could occur as a result of a congregation of that many people. But
So we saw, we actually walked onto the roof where the sniper was. A clear, eyes-on, clear shot of the president. A tree blocked the Secret Service's view. This kid did some investigation. He had a drone out there days prior. got an aerial surveillance of the premises. And that position was probably the best position outside the perimeter, as far as I could tell. There was also a water tower that would have been a perfect spot for Secret Service. Were you aware of any presence of Secret Service in this water tower?
I was not.
And you're aware?
I'm going to pause it here because there's been a lot of questions about the water tower and some video. There was definitely a vehicle parked under the water tower, very close to it. Now, if he's not aware of Secret Service being assigned to the water tower or on top of the water tower, then it begs the question, who was up on that water tower?
What I'm talking about?
I am familiar. I physically flew out there on Saturday the 13th. It was still very much an active crime scene, so I did not walk the roofs, but I did.
On the adjacent building, we got a tour of that as well, where I believe the local police were positioned. There were 3 windows. The first one had a plain view of where the sniper would be. However, they were stationed in the second and third windows. Are you familiar with this at all?
I am not, from the standpoint that I have not seen the Secret Service's operations plan, and our deference would be to them to assign Butler ESU
Right.
According
And
to.
they were apparently local counter snipers. Do you know if they should have been assigned to the rooftop?
I would defer to there are many ways that you can cover. Obviously, positioning people on the rooftop would be one of those.
No, and going to the actual site, way too close. He should never have been allowed to get on top of that building. Yeah. And I don't know how, and I know he was on your radar inside the perimeter. You seem to have lost him, and somehow he finds his way up to the rooftop unimpeded until a local law enforcement officer crawls on top of the roof and looks at him, and he points his AR-15 at him. My question to you is, what was the communication like that day? Typically, Secret Service has one channel for them, the other channel for state and locals. Was there any communication to identify, hey, this is not a local police officer. This is, in fact, an unidentified individual on the rooftop. Was that communicated to the Secret Service?
So my belief, as I sit here today, is that we did have integrated communications from members that were inside of the Secret Service command post. Completely deferential to the ongoing nature of the investigation. I have an understanding of a sequence of events, but I would like to draw a distinction between a sequence of events, meaning.
So my theory is that they thought maybe he was an officer, but then they find out he's not. The thing I find interesting is that the counter sniper Secret Service, within seconds of the shots on the president, kills the suspect. That tells me he had him in his sights. Maybe he's not aware of who the individual was not identified. But I know within seconds after the shots were fired at the president, the threat was eliminated. Lastly, I just want to end with this.
Dead men tell no tales.
That is true.
This was actually astonishing, and I want to get your confirmation. He had a detonation device with him, and 2 of his bombs were located in his car that was parked on the other side of the perimeter. Seems to me a good theory would be that he was going to kill the president and then detonate his car, causing a diversion, and then escape from the crime scene. Are you aware of any of this?
I am aware of the presence of the device on his person. We were aware of that very early on, and that was a serious tactical consideration in the hours in the immediate aftermath as we worked that crime scene. But to your point about his ultimate theory or what his ultimate motivation was, that remains under investigation.
And he had a rangefinder on him as well. That's a big red flag. I yield back.
Yeah, I'd say a rangefinder is a huge red flag, especially when you're crawling up on a roof. Anyway, this was just an absolute failure at every level.
An epic failure.
Epic failure. So the question is, whose fault is it, and what do we do about it? All right. So our next clip is from the 14220 So 14724. This is Korea, Democrat from California. 14220.
There he is.
Minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank you and the ranking member for putting together the trip to Butler yesterday. Good, eye-opening trip. And Colonel Paris, thank you for hosting us out there. I certainly hope that the Secret Service does cooperate with us in our investigation as to what went wrong.
Yeah.
Secret Service has to be 100% correct all the time. There's small force, 2,300 plus maybe 1,300. So you local, state, local police officers are the force multiplier.
Hmm?
And to hear you say that miscommunication was an element here is unacceptable. We talked earlier to the fact that FirstNet was put together post 9/11. It's a little bit over 20 years ago. And to hear that we still don't have the technology for people on the ground to talk with each other is of concern.
Who calls it that? Who calls it post 911? Not 9/11. Like who? I'm serious. Like, have you heard people refer to it as 911 before?
Yeah.
Really? It just seems weird to me. I don't know.
It's even of greater concern to me when I was taking a tour of that farm in Butler, Pennsylvania yesterday. I had local law enforcement officers, local electeds coming to me, whispering to me, there's more here to the story. We need to talk about what actually happened.
I wholeheartedly believe that. I wholeheartedly believe that A, there's more to the story, and B, that local people know about it.
To have people that were on the ground there concerned, afraid of stepping forward is unacceptable.
Yeah.
To tell us of other failures that maybe this committee does not know about yet, that were part of what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, is unacceptable. I asked one of the officers, safety officers, could you talk to the Secret Service? Said, no, we can't communicate. Took us 15 minutes to communicate with them.
That's
Local elected official who said, I have other stories that I need to talk to you about when you have a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, we're 4.5 months away from this election.
Mm-hmm.
Pennsylvania is a battleground state.
Yep.
Yes, it is.
You will have these kinds of events again. And to know that we don't have the facts, let alone execute a plan to fix the holes, is unacceptable to our democracy and to our country. We can talk about the facts. The facts are a lot of things went wrong.
You
Let's
think?
talk about how to fix it.
Right.
Fix
I
it
agree with
now. And I think we start with accepting the fact that things went wrong and that we need more resources. Colonel
Yeah.
Paris,
Listen. I'm just going to interject here really quickly because resources are not the problem.
No.
Money is not the problem. The Secret Service has billions of dollars. What is it said? $13 billion,
I think was their budget last year.
Yeah. But money's the problem, guys. Even though little walkie-talkie radios, FirstNet, all of these things already exist. There is no amount of money in the world that can make someone not go in from the heat if they don't want to work in the heat. Like, it's ridiculous.
For some politicians always think, oh, we just need more money.
More money always solves the problems to people who are spending other people's money.
Uh-huh.
your volunteers, your officers that you put on the line to help the Secret Service, are they actually compensated somewhere for their overtime, their extra time they're out there?
They're in a paid status, yes.
Yeah,
They're not,
of course they are.
we assign them to those duties, and if they incur overtime as a result of the contract, the contractual bargaining agreement, we pay them.
So let me ask you something in the minute and a half I have left. One of the local officers there, after we spoke a while, I said, well, let me summarize what you just told me. You're asking me who's in charge. And he asked me, yeah, I want to know who's in charge. I said, well, let's talk some more. And he said, Lou, we don't know if it's the campaign or the Secret Service that's in charge here. Said, if I called for a row of dump trucks to be put up behind the stand, it wouldn't happen because the optics would not be good for a campaign rally.
This is the second time I've heard that exact phrasing.
Yeah. Because I think we had heard that on another
We did.
hearing.
Yeah, the previous hearing that we had with the FBI director and the Secret Service director.
I think you're right.
That's the exact same phrasing that I believe another Democrat, but I could be wrong on that, but definitely someone had asked, well, nobody knows who's in charge. And again, row of dump trucks, the same exact question, the same exact phrasing. Why is that important? Because someone gave these people talking points. You don't have the exact same phrasing and the exact same questions unless someone goes, hey, ask this. It's just weird. I find it very, very, again, this entire thing is extremely suspicious. But this just cements that there's more going on than meets the eye here.
I want to know who's in charge protecting our national candidates. And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to see if we can ask those tough questions. This is not a Democrat or Republican issue. This is about trying to come up with some rules, protocol to make sure this does not happen again. After the events, we can sit here, we can point fingers at each other and talk about partisanship. It's not going to fix our democracy or electoral system. Mr. Chairman, I do hope we go back and talk to a lot of those folks who are not here today, who wanted to talk, who weren't invited, and a lot of people, even if we invite them, are not going to talk. Because frankly speaking, they want to keep their heads down as the shooting continues. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield.
What an interesting phrase. What an interesting phrase he used. He says he'd like to get, and I agree with this, we do want to get to the bottom of it.
We do.
But I do find it very interesting how he's not so much concerned about who's at fault and not so much concerned about how this came about, just fix it moving forward. We don't really care what happened as long as it doesn't happen to our guy. Now, maybe I'm reading that wrong. Maybe that's not what he meant. But I do find a very interesting phraseology there insofar as, well, we could invite these people, but they won't come because they want to keep their head down while the shooting continues. What? Isn't that weird?
My guess is he's referring to those Republicans who don't want to take away the guns. That's what it sounds like. Do you know what I'm saying?
That, you know what? That wouldn't surprise me. You know, bear in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that of course Democrats feel the need every possible chance to remind you that guns actually hurt people and that you shouldn't have them. The police they want to defund and the military should have them, but you shouldn't. Damn that. Damn that. But moving on.
It's right
we're gonna
after
let
this.
the clip play. What's that?
Yeah, it's right after
Yeah,
this.
it's right after this, and it is Bishop, Representative Bishop from North Carolina. He is a Republican.
Gentleman yields. I now recognize Mr. Bishop for 5 minutes of.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colonel Paris, are you aware whether any law enforcement officer or officers was or were posted in the second floor window of the AGR building?
I am aware, yes, sir.
And what is the answer?
To my knowledge, there were 2 posted there from Butler ESU.
And you said Butler ESU. What is the acronym ESU stand for?
Emergency Services Unit. It's a team that's comprised of multiple agencies that pool resources on a county or several county basis in order to enhance capabilities and training and be able to respond. Basically, a mutual aid agreement is my understanding of it.
Is it sort of like a SWAT team?
They are trained in SWAT tactics, to my knowledge.
So how many ESU officers were posted to that second floor window?
So I am aware that 2 were in the building, but again, I have not seen the Secret Service operations plan.
Do you know, well, you say in the building, were they in a window, where a window out onto the scene?
From briefings that I have been given, I was told they were in a window, yes, sir.
Did they remain on post?
I was told that at a certain point, they began searching along with other local officers in the immediacy after Crooks had been identified as suspicious by them.
By them?
My understanding is that they identified Crooks for not matriculating. He never, to my knowledge, Crooks never made it through the secure perimeter into the venue space itself. That he was identified by those members as suspicious in part because of that. And then at some point, he produced the rangefinder, which heightened that suspicion.
So Representative Crane took a video on site.
Obviously, it didn't heighten the suspicion enough.
No.
Just
Why didn't they stop him if they?
Right.
Rangefinder, which heightened that suspicion.
So Representative Crane took a video on site yesterday. I'd like staff to put that up. It's just very short. There's a few seconds.
Okay.
They can do that.
Let's see what we got here.
If I understand correctly, this is from the second story window of the AGR building. You can see that window comes out from the sash and swings out to the right. There's an aerial photo right after Crooks was killed, where Crooks's body's on the roof, and that window was open. Was it from this vantage point that those ESU officers spotted Crooks?
I don't know that particular window, but my understanding is from a second story window is where he was initially spotted.
Okay, so are you then saying that, to your knowledge, those ESU officers left the location where they could look out the window to go in search of this person?
That is my understanding.
So sometime between the time he was spotted on the ground and identified as someone suspicious until the shooting, they had left that post to go look for him. Is that what you're saying?
My understanding is yes, along with other municipal officers that responded to that area. And that's based on interviews that we've conducted. And I want to be very clear that I don't want to establish a timeline minute by minute because we don't have that yet.
Okay. So I want everyone to understand what this man just said. People were stationed where exactly on the building they were supposed to be is up for debate. Allegedly, some people were supposed to be on the roof, some people were supposed to be in the window, whatever. Either way, allegedly, 2 officers were in the window. They spotted a suspicious individual, and instead of having a roving group, or in addition to roving officers, these individuals left their post to go and hunt down this suspicious character in conjunction or with other people. Like, I've never been a police officer, but I did work in Indiana State Prison, where security is kind of just a little important, right? You never, ever leave your post. You report something to your supervisor, and they look into it. Like basic security.
Yeah.
Do not leave your post. You are assigned to that post for a reason. Dude, there's no way that they're this incompetent. I refuse to believe that they're this incompetent, which the only other explanation is this was on purpose.
I think that's revelatory. I haven't heard that information. I did hear before that and there's a local news station. Well, there's a local news station report from July 17 that says that local law enforcement were told they couldn't be responsible for securing the AGR building during the Trump rally. And of course, you've testified a moment ago or earlier in this hearing that it was your understanding from that the meeting with the Secret Service on the site was that ESU was going to handle the AGR building. Which is it? Do you know?
Good question.
My understanding is what my initial answer was.
Okay. You also, in response to
Which means local police were responsible for securing that building. I don't know why the local news reported that, but according to him, Butler ESU, or that SWAT team group, multi-jurisdictional group, was responsible for securing the AGR building.
Mr. McCall, you started to say something. You were saying that you did have integrated comms, and you were saying you were deferring to the ongoing investigation, but you have an understanding of the sequence, and then he cut you off and went on to another question. Do you know what you were about to say? Do you remember that?
Just that we had members of PSP inside of the Secret Service command post, and we were maintaining communication with our people.
Had ESU maintained position in that window overlooking the roof, isn't it true that they would have had a clean shot at at Mr. Crooks as he was ascending the roof to his shooting position?
I'm not prepared to say that because I don't know the exact timeline of events.
But it's your understanding, though, that they were no longer in that room where they had been previously overlooking the building at the time he was ascending the roof. Is that correct?
Could you repeat that question?
The ESU officers were no longer in that room where they could look out the window and oversee the roof as that video shows.
I believe they were actively searching along with additional municipal officers for Mr. Crooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My time's expired.
In other words, no, they weren't in the building at the window, which is their assigned post from all that we understand, whether someone was supposed to be on the roof or not. In addition to, there were these guys, girls, whatever, individuals that were assigned to those windows to watch that roof.
And they allegedly left.
And they allegedly took off to go look for
What you
this
don't
guy.
do when security.
Which you do not do. You never, ever, ever leave your post. When you're
No.
assigned a post, you don't leave it. Okay. All right. Anyway, moving on. Okay. So our next clip is from Representative Jimenez, Republican from Florida. 15810.
Jimenez for 5 minutes question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colonel Paris, you said the United States Secret Service, Penn State Police was there, Butler ESU was there. Any other law enforcement agency there?
According to the operations plan that PSP put together, there were elements from Butler County Sheriff. Deputy sheriffs were on some of those interior posts, and thus they were on our.
I just need the answer.
I apologize. There are one additional ones that I could name would be Butler County Sheriffs were in our operations plan. Pittsburgh City Police provided assets to the motorcade, and I believe Allegheny County Police also.
You said that you were in the Incident Command Center, that your agency was in the Incident Command Center with the Secret Service.
Yes, sir.
Well, all the other agencies in that command center?
I believe that some of those agencies were represented, but I can't definitively tell you.
We need to find the answer to that. It was Butler ESU in that command center?
I was told at one point that there was a representative in there. How long and over what period, I'm not sure. I'm aware of three.
So the agency that's in charge of the outside perimeter, actually the agency in charge of the greatest threat, because when you stand at the podium, and I stood there, and when you look, all you had to do is look around. there's the greatest threat right there. It's 100 yards away. It's elevated, direct line of fire to the president. I stood on that.
Yeah, I'm going to say this. Anyone with a security state of mind could look at that roof from that podium and determine that and the water tower are the two greatest threats. Period. End of story. How do you leave that open? It's like I said, intentional is the only thing that comes to mind.
That roof, no problem standing on that roof. And yes, I am a fire to the president. I stood on that roof, no problem standing on that roof. And yes, I am 70 years old. Okay.
Right.
So the timeline is very important here. If in fact they thought that Mr. Brooks was so suspicious that they actually pulled the ESU counter snipers away, because there were counter snipers, what I understand, in that window, a way to look for him. And from what I understand the timeline, it's about 20 minutes before the president came out. Was that information relayed to the Secret Service, that they were looking for a suspicious individual and that people had been pulled away to look for that suspicious individual? Was that relayed to the Secret Service?
I believe that it was.
And was that real?
Interesting.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting statement there. So what he's saying is Secret Service were notified that the officers left their post.
And Trump has said that he was never notified. Yeah.
I don't know about you, but it sounded more and more like this was at least a poorly disguised internal attempt of some kind.
The Secret Service.
I believe that it was.
And was that relayed to the Secret Service, the team that surrounds the president himself?
I can't answer that.
Well, if it wasn't, that's another big mess up.
You think?
And I can tell you, this is just one of a bunch of mess ups that I've seen.
Yeah.
One of them question that I have is, why in the world was that team from ESU in the building to begin with? Why weren't they on a rooftop? And it was a hot day, right? And so that's another question that I'm going to, why were you assigned inside a building when you have a little window, it's like this big, right? And your line of sight out of that window, unless you stick your head out of the window, is pretty limited, your view. So why were you inside, not outside? Who said for them to be inside and not outside? What did the Secret Service tell you were inside the perimeter, right?
Yes.
For the most part,
You're saying
you were inside the perimeter.
Me personally, or the?
No, I'm saying your agency was inside
Yes.
the perimeter. But actually the biggest threat was outside the perimeter. And so who developed the plan to protect the outside of the perimeter? There's only one agency. That's the United States Secret Service. Because you really can't ask the local agency to do that because
Right.
they're not in the business of dignitary protection.
No.
They
Right.
don't do it all the time. You don't do it all the time. They do it all the time.
Exactly.
So, Mr. Chairman, we're going to need those other agencies to come in. We need a timeline. Who said what to who,
Yes.
and what the action that was taken. You know, one thing that I noticed in another video, and I've got to find out if it's true, and it appears to be true, is that the snipers on the south side repositioned to look to the north side. And I want to know what the timeline for that
Yeah.
was. How far in advance were the snipers, the counter snipers on the south side told, hey, you need to look at a threat on the north side?
That's a very good question. And why?
Yeah.
At what point and why?
Told, hey, you need to look at a threat on the north side. And how much time was there between that and then the shots being fired? Do you have any information on that?
I do not have a specific timeline.
Okay, and those are that's the information that we need. It's not unusual to have people on different frequencies. Actually, you have to because you have so many people, but you have to have.
And that's something I will also confirm. There are different channels for a reason. You can't have everybody on the same channel because you'll be walking over each other in a crisis situation. You're going to have those people that are trying to relay information being walked on or talked over by other people. My wife actually worked, when we worked at ISP, she worked in the control room, and that handles radio communications. A lot of times you have to tell people, shut up. There are various signals for radio silence, etc. But you have to have multiple channels so that everyone can coordinate and communicate. So that much, yes, but shouldn't everyone be monitoring a singular channel and have their This was a cluster, man. That's just all there is to it. This was a failure on multiple levels.
Actually, you have to, because you have so many people, but you have to have everybody in the same place so they communicate with each other. So we need to know if everybody that was in charge or had responsibility for protecting not only the interior perimeter, but outside the perimeter, if they were all in that incident command center. And if they weren't, that's a huge problem too. Thank you, and I yield back.
Yeah. I mean, if they weren't where they needed to be or paying attention to the channels they were supposed to be paying attention to, that tells you something else. But no matter what, this thing, man, holy hell. All right, so our next clip, there's actually like 3 people, I guess, talking during this, and it's 2:12:29 to 2 hours 18 minutes and 56 seconds.
Question. There's a piece of legislation.
Oh, by the way, the 3 reps are Pfluger, Thompson, and Green. Sorry.
For you, I want to talk about now that leads me into this next question. There's a piece of legislation, HR 8081, called the Disgraced Act. It says denying infinite security and government resources allocated towards convicted and extremely dishonorable former protectees act, which is a whole mouthful of basically taking details away
You know where
from
this is
people
going.
that could include those who are convicted. Talk to me about the impact if former President Trump didn't have a protective detail of U.S. Secret Service there. Talk to me about the impact on state and local partners to protect them in any of the communities that you represent. And by the way, he also was responsible for taking out al-Baghdadi, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, and Qasem Soleimani, and the Iranian government wants to do harm to him and other people like him. So what's the impact if you don't have Secret Service help?
More than happy to you. So I think, we're trying not to become very political in this. I think we have a president of the United States who has, by simple virtue of his position, having served as president, that deserves a certain protection because of his service to the country. So the rest of these things are all things that are not for me to decide, other than to tell you that I think we have a responsibility to our leaders.
This is not political. That's not political. He deserves protection. You're absolutely
I
right.
agree.
Colonel Paris?
I would just echo that my understanding is it's a federal statute that creates the Secret Service and tasks them with those responsibilities. So to contemplate a different paradigm, I would reflect back to the legislature to contemplate
If
something.
he was denied a protective detail in Pennsylvania this past week, the weekend prior, what would that have done to your local resources to protect him adequately?
I think the removal of any resource inherently makes the burden on the surrounding resources that would have been committed somewhat additional.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
There's an understatement for you, somewhat additional.
You know what they're referring to, right?
Yeah, so there's this. Okay, so let me bring you guys up to speed. Actually, I'll let Shawn do it. So,
Okay, there was legislation that was proposed by the ranking member from Mississippi,
is it Thompson?
Thompson, who they'd take away Secret Service protection for any president or anybody that has been convicted of a felony.
Okay. Okay.
So that's
So-
what they're referring
That's
to.
what they're referring to. And again, ladies and gentlemen, whether you love Trump, whether you hate Trump, whether you love or hate some of these previous presidents, it doesn't matter. By virtue of serving as president, you have a target on your back for the rest of your life. people who want to hurt this country will do so by targeting the president. Not to mention the stuff that they carried out while they were in office. A perfect example, like he said, is the removal of Soleimani and
The killing, but
removal. I mean,
okay.
you know, killing, whatever you call it, whatever you want.
Okay,
The squash like a bug. I mean, you know,
Iranian-
magnifying glass on an ant kind of thing. You know, whatever you want to call it, death from above. I mean, I'm just saying, right?
But yes, they have a bounty out for Trump.
Right.
Iran.
Exactly. So, look, we can debate the virtues or lack thereof of the various lawsuits against Donald Trump. It's irrelevant. All of it is irrelevant. By serving as president, and I'm going to tell you, like me, myself, right? It would be very difficult for a normal, regular American to ascend to the office of president, to serve as president, and then for whatever reason, legal lawfare comes after you, gets you convicted. Most people break the law multiple times a day without having any knowledge of it. Just so you know. Look it up. That's a fact.
I've seen that.
Yeah. Because there are so many obscure, weird laws on the books that have never been taken off. They can find something to get you with if they want to.
Mhm.
There's multiple quotes out there. Give me a man and or what was it? I can indict a ham sandwich with a grand jury. Our legal system has become extremely convoluted and imperfect. Let's just leave it there. They can find something to get you on. So it's quite easy for the opposing party to find something to charge you with, get a conviction with their jury, and then say, oh, you don't get any protection, and squish you like a bug. Because you cannot, any normal individual cannot stand up to the powers that be, whether it be three-letter agencies, whether it be hired assassins, whether it be, when you're dealing with the kind of resources that governments have, and not just the United States, but governments in general, no individual can hope to match the kind of resources that are available to entire countries. That's just, so this whole thing is, I almost did it. I almost said the R word. No, this whole thing is stupid. It's stupid to even talk about, to even consider. But all right, so we're just about done with this clip. A couple more minutes, about 3 or 4 more minutes, and then we got 2 more clips for you, and then we'll wish you mwah.
Gentleman yields. Point of order.
Point of order.
Point of order.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thompson wants to explain.
I appreciate the gentleman's question, but let me put it another way to
Here we
the
go.
witnesses.
Uh-huh.
The reference legislation.
Mr. Ranking Member, I mean, a question to the witness would be someone yielding
Yeah.
to you. A point of order, I'm allowing you to make a point
Thank
of order.
you.
Learn the rules, dipshit.
Well, the point of order is, if you read the bill, it says that if you are a convicted felon and found and sentenced by a judge,
Mr. Chairman.
then you would not be,
Yeah, what difference does
What
that make?
difference does that make?
Exactly.
that you would not have service. You have to be a convicted felon and sentenced. Now,
So
at the time the bill was filed, nobody who was a protectee was a convicted felon.
you're so full of it. This guy is so full of it.
Yeah.
He knew darn good and well that the jury was going to find Trump guilty. Let's not even pretend. Look, you want to go after your partisan politics, fine. But stop pretending it's anything else. Stop pretending there's any degree of virtue or impartiality or anything like that. Give me a break.
But if those who are lawyers here know that once you are a convicted felon and sentenced, you are remanded the custody of that particular law enforcement agency for custody.
Actually, you're wrong, dipshit, because it depends on your sentence. You can be sentenced to
Yeah.
probation. You can be sentenced to suspended sentence.
Yeah, he doesn't even know.
The guy's a friggin' moron. He is a moron who can barely read. Thank you very much.
I think it's an anomaly to try to say that the Secret Service would have to protect a felon in jail, a convicted felon. So this whole notion about my legislation, I just say to the gentleman, if you read it, it says you have to be a convicted felon and sentenced. Now,
What
we're
difference
not
does
that.
that make?
Here, right. So here's the thing, right? If you're convicted, you're going to be sentenced.
Yeah. That's
At
why-
some point.
Yeah.
These people are genuinely stupid. I really try. I do. I've done well sometimes. Today I'm not doing so well with the whole impartiality thing, but like, bruh.
The conjecture, you can do whatever you want. But let me be clear about the bill.
No, of course.
Republicans have made a lot of hay about the bill.
I wonder why.
Yeah.
I wonder why. Because it just happens to only apply at this point to Orange Man Bad. That can't possibly be by design, right? No.
Saying it's about former President Trump and would take away his
It
security.
is about President Trump.
It
That
is.
just is not true. The bill doesn't mention former Trump, President
It doesn't
Trump,
have to.
and it
Doesn't have
would
to,
not have
dipshit.
affected security at this tragic event. The bill talks about any Secret Service protectee who is convicted of a felony and sentenced to serve jail time.
Okay. Now you're actually kind of starting to at least make a modicum of sense. Sentenced to serve jail time. Okay, all right. I don't agree, but I understand. There's words matter. Words matter, Baldy. And I can hate on baldness because,
And it does not take away security.
it's so
The
shiny.
bill makes clear that when a protectee is sentenced and remanded to the custody of prison officials, the Secret Service is able to hand off the prisoner in an orderly fashion.
Weren't they going to do that anyway?
No, here's the thing, right? The way that it's set up right now, they have to figure out a way for Secret Service to accompany whomever into a correctional facility. Put it this way, they cannot leave Secret Service protection. Secret Service is assigned to them. And since, everybody made such a big deal about the federal government being the top of the pyramid and being in charge, then federal law trumps all these state laws, including laws regarding the correctional facilities and all of that.
I see.
Right? So let's say, for example, since I'm familiar with Indiana State Prison, let's say that Trump was assigned to do time at Indiana State Prison or just any former president, right? They go through all this bullshit lawfare trial, are found guilty, fail appeals, all that happens. Boom, you got to serve time. Okay. I know it'd be a federal facility anyway. Well, no, it's a state crime. State crime, right? So, okay, let's just say it's Indiana instead of New York. Assigned to go to ISP. Like, what the hell are you going to do? You can't have someone have Secret Service protection inside the prison walls.
I see.
Like, Secret Service is going to be armed. They're not going to give up their weapons. You can't have weapons behind the wall. What are you going to do? That's why legal scholars have been wrangling with this actually since charges were initially filed. Okay, if, for example, it does come to worst case scenario, what are they going to do? Where is he going to serve his time? That's one reason why this steaming pile of has come up with this bill, because if they can't kill him at the rally, they're going to kill him in prison. I'm telling you, that's what it's all about. They want him gone. That's really what it comes down to. You can wax poetic about, oh, it doesn't mention Trump anywhere in there. No, it just happens to affect the only protectee that was.
He
You're
knows.
fooling no one. Dude.
He knows who it's
He
about.
knows.
I hope he knows.
And that Secret Service agents aren't forced to become correctional officers too. That's the legislation. That's all it says.
That's all I think.
For the
You're an
record,
idiot.
we can go back to.
The gentleman will need to get to his point of order.
Yeah, what's your point of order, dipshit?
Is the line of question is inconsistent with the legislation.
No, it's
And
not.
It does not say on that day, former President Trump would have been without Secret Service protection. He is not sentenced. If he's not sentenced, he will still have the protection. Plain and simple.
So
Okay, do you feel better?
you yield on your point of order, Mr. Ranking Member? You did. Okay.
Are you done?
I want to make a point of
Pretty
order
much
then
what
as
Green's
well.
saying.
And
Yeah,
you
here we
know, a lot of times we hear from both sides of the aisle about rhetoric and how rhetoric and the things we do in messaging bills that we do shapes discussion, impacts people. And first, my point of order is prison isn't necessarily a safer place. You can ask Mr. Epstein's family about that.
Yeah.
And so to suggest that somehow you'd have the security necessary in a prison, I think is just not an
Laughable.
accurate statement.
Laughable. Look, guys, all other BS aside, if they want to get you in prison, you're got. It's that simple. They're gonna sharpen like I said in a previous video, I'll say it again here. I've seen Jolly Ranchers used as weapons. I have seen toothbrushes sharpened to a point. I have seen toilet paper sharpened. Like, you give someone enough time, they will come up with a way to make a weapon from darn near anything. Almost out of thin air. It's truly impressive. It really is. As a matter of fact, there's the wall or whatever. There's a display case in Indiana State Prison, right? In the administration building. And it has a several rows, a display of weapons that have been confiscated. And the sheer ingenuity involved in this is truly, like I said, impressive. Impressive. If they want you dead behind bars, you're going to die. It's that simple, especially if there's more than one person or a couple of people involved. Is over. It's just that simple. And to suggest that a prison is a safer environment than Secret Service protection is laughable. Look at the number of prison attacks, fatalities. Here you go. I got some homework for you. Look up PREA, right? PREA, Prison Rape Elimination Act. There's a reason that that's legislation. Look it up. That's all I'm going to say. And now just imagine, instead of assault, they want to kill you instead. Like, it is very, very simple. You're not safe behind bars. Yes, the job of the officers, including me when I worked there, was to keep you safe from other offenders. That's not possible all the time. Officers are vastly outnumbered. It's just the reality of the situation. These guys are idiots. The bald-headed guy in particular from Mississippi. Bruh.
In terms of, I agree with the ranking member that his bill did say that it would not apply in this particular case, but it's more about what we're doing and what we're saying at certain times that generates the attitude in our society. And so I just make that point of order about this particular legislation. I made in my opening remarks a request that he would draw the bill.
Anyway, all right, we got two more clips for you. And this is 22008 to 22152. This is Representative Ivy from Maryland. He is also a dipshit. I mean, Democrat. Let's see. 22008. I really don't feel like listening to these two cry back and forth about this stupid ass bill. So that's pretty much what that was.
The individuals who were injured on the day of the shooting.
Here we go.
And I want to thank the chair for taking us up to Butler yesterday. My only regret about it was that it was too quick. And I think
I could see that.
and I didn't know it was going to be like that, frankly, until after we got there and had a chance to talk to people in the community. But when we got there, they were very anxious to talk to us. In particular, I had conversations with Angela Flieger, supervisor for, and I hope I don't butcher this too bad, Connequenessing Township, who was extremely helpful, and Sam Zerzolo, who is a commissioner from Butler Township. And they were able to provide information on several fronts that I think we need to pay attention to, not just for this particular event, but going forward. Could you hit a video for me there? I think Ms. Flieger tried to produce this and sent it to me. The red building is the one that was directly behind the stage. The building in the center there was where the shooter was. The reason I'm asking for this to be shown is that as you get past the middle of it, look to the opposite side of the field from where the shots came. Oh, you can stop it now. I counted about 12 rooftops there, just sort of standing at the front. I'm a former federal prosecutor. I don't have a background in protection, but my thought was, why would we pick a spot where you had that many rooftops that were available? And my colleague, Mr. Crane, I definitely defer to your experience as a sniper in the military, and your point about picking the water tower as a higher point would have been a good one, I think, to consider. And I'm curious about.
Yeah, interesting.
Mhm.
That's the second time we've heard someone refer to the water tower as being an even more superior spot to that. But either way, rooftops and water towers abound. Why did this happen? Okay, our last clip is 232:38 to 235:55, and this is Representative Goldman, Democrat from New York. New York. 232:38 to 235:55, Goldman from New York.
Questions here today because there are a lot of unanswered questions, and I sat through a 4.5-hour hearing yesterday with the director of the Secret Service, and we got no information. So I'm going to jump on, piggyback off of Mr. Garbarino. Where you left off is that you relayed, or PSP relayed, the photograph to the number that the Secret Service directed your officer to. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Now, did anything come back? Any instructions or directions come back from the Secret Service?
So again, that is left to the after action. We're trying to come up with a sequence of events that led to Crooks on top of the building where he ultimately took the shots. So
right, but you said, I'm trying to find, I don't need the specific timeline. I'm trying to just figure out the sequence, because you said that many of your officers, or Butler ESU officers, were looking for Crooks. That was after that photograph was relayed to the Secret Service?
My understanding was after the photo was relayed to our trooper in the command post, and yes, Crooks was in that area around the building. My understanding is 2 additional municipal officers who were on a different post responded to that area, and they began actively looking for Crooks. They circumscribed the building to try and locate him. It became apparent at some point that he was up on the roof. Those 2 municipal officers who responded then to their credit, actively, once they realized that he was on the roof, one boosted the other one up, hanging from the ledge of the roof. By the time that officer was boosted up on top of the roof, Crooks was on it, almost in that final position that you saw. He had the AR out, and he pointed it at the municipal officer who, suspended from the roof, was not in a position, feet dangling at that point, to draw a weapon or continue hoisting himself back up on the roof. He drops back down from the roof, and at this point, I believe that's when the video that's been widely circulated with people filming Crooks up on the roof, saying there's somebody up on the roof. There were other law enforcement around the building running, but their vantage point on the ground did not lend a clear line of sight to where Crooks was at the top of that building. One of our troopers on roving patrol also was notified. That word went out, and he responded about the time that the municipal officer was boosting the other officer up onto the roof.
What was he notified of?
I don't know specifically. That's going to be part of the after action. But we obviously knew that he was, Crooks was suspicious. He had not gone into the venue, and they were actively doing everything they could to try and locate him.
So
Okay. So once again, quick summary for you. It's not our fault. We were assigned to the inside perimeter. It's someone else's fault. Well, what's the timeline of events? Well, we're still trying to work on the timeline of events. Were there people assigned to the windows? Yes. Where were they when the shooting happened? Well, they were kind of walking around looking for the guy instead of having roving, which he just admitted roving existed. There were people assigned to respond to, hey, check this person out. Just an overall failure all the way around.
Yeah.
Hopefully at some point we can get to the bottom of this, but we're working our way through it.
Mhm.
That's it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you again real soon. God bless you. God bless Indiana, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
If you'd like to support the show, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/Dion's Daily Dose. This has been Dion's Daily Dose, hosted by Dion Bergeron. Executive producers, Shawn Holmgren and Michael Beebe. Copyright 2024. Dion's Daily Dose, all rights reserved.